Hello, Seetal. Welcome to Cultural Voices Pod. So excited to chat to you. We've known each other for a long time, so I'm really excited to actually spend some time and dig deeper into you and your career and all the things that made you follow the path that you did, actually. Because I think it's going to be super interesting for our audience, but also really important for the world. So let's dig in from the beginning. Let's talk about your foundation. So, what's your upbringing, where you're from, and how did that shape the way you see the world today?
Wow.
It all starts from foundations. It all starts from foundations. Yeah.
Let's get into it. Well, firstly, it's so great to be chatting to you about this
Yeah.
because I don't think we've had like a one-to-one like this
Not
before.
like this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, there'll be some learnings, I guess.
Of
Well,
course.
a lot of revelations in some
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But yes. So, my cultural upbringing. Indian household, so South Asian,
Hmm.
but very influenced by East Africa. And yeah, I have Persian roots, East African roots, and very connected to, I guess, this kind of a mixed identity and, you know, navigating something that felt quite displaced for a really long time.
Hmm.
And almost like, no, not almost, I did. I rejected my identity as being Indian.
Hmm.
I grew up in Leicester, so that's where I was born and raised. Left at 19, didn't really return. And yeah, obviously that was uni life. And I think for me, like so much of my rooting has stemmed from making things
Mm. Mm.
and dismantling things to understand how things are made. And that has very early years, I would say, from cooking.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. Makes
So,
sense though when you say it like that. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
and so that was from a very early age of 5. We
Mm.
had we lived in an intergenerational household, so
Mm.
grandparents
Of
lived
course.
above the shop.
Yeah.
Lived above the shop that my parents worked in, and we all worked in. So it was very typical ethnic household.
Of course, everyone's in, basically, all in.
Proper family run business,
Yeah.
and it was like a community center, so we had to understand maybe like 6 different languages
Wow.
because of the different walks of life that were
Hmm.
living there, and it was incredible, honestly, on reflection. Yeah, at the time it was very challenging
Yeah.
because we didn't have social lives.
Hmm.
Language was something that was incredibly rooted in the way that we were observing and listening to like people's needs and
Hmm.
what they actually wanted
Hmm.
in life. And that was through the shop for sure. And I think with being in an ethnic household, you're always in servitude to others, right? So that was something that was very a strong belief system that was placed in our lives too. But yeah, cooking really helped me understand where things come from, how to treat ingredients, and also make the most out of them. So, which meant that if we wasted anything, we would be slapped,
Yeah.
like, it would be like hell. So, because everything's precious and
Yes, of
everything
course.
is respected
Hmm.
in that was our upbringing. Like everything was kind of worshipped. Like everything was living.
Hmm.
So we
And
always respected that.
it's so interesting when you talk about that because and obviously these are really strong values. Like these are really huge, strong values. Feels like that's carried on in your work somehow. Do you think that? Do you think that this kind of like this cultural, like social, like family thing that may have felt really challenging at the time is really the essence of you know, you being what I love as a title, materials translator. I just love that because it means so much and it's so big and it's so important. Um, and it must be weird because, like, you know, it being feeling challenging at the time is actually such a core essence
Mhm.
of who you are. How does that carry through your work today?
Yeah, they're very strong belief
Yeah.
systems that I still uphold now.
Mm.
Like, I couldn't really do what I do without those
Mm.
principles ever. But I believed in them from
Mm.
early. So I didn't reject those principles.
Right.
They made sense to me because
Yeah.
it was common sense.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, there were other things that I questioned, but those principles, I was like, this is everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they made sense to me, which I then had to really understand how I would integrate them into my
Mm.
life and what they meant for me
Got it.
carrying forward.
Mm.
So it was, I believe that everything is alive. So animism is a
Yes.
very core principle in my upbringing
Mm.
and in a lot of cultures, especially indigenous ones.
Mm-hmm.
And so materials are the same.
Yeah. I mean, it totally makes sense, you know, and I think so insightful, just that foundation. You know, every time I speak to anyone on this pod, that has been like so important. Like, people don't understand that that is really the core system that you see the world through, negatively or positively. But that is the core system because those are your sort of like important belief moments, isn't there? But was there a moment that fundamentally sort of either shifted or leaned into that perspective that you went, you know what, this is what I'm going to work in? It's not going to be cooking, it's going to be this particular thing. What happened? What was that pivotal moment where you're like, I'm going to be a materials translator? You know, um what was the inspiration behind that?
Oh, there's been many moments, Leila.
Okay, good. But maybe that is also the story as well. Maybe it's not one big moment, you know, maybe it's a build, you
Yeah,
know. How did you get there?
it's been a journey and a half. So I've always done textiles.
Okay.
So that's a subject that I really wanted to explore because it was the essence of how things are made in the
Mhm.
world. So I'm like, well, if we understand this and a textile, we have to understand where it's grown, what it's grown from, what conditions it needs to grow, and then how it gets processed into what it can become. So it's like something from nothing, really.
Mm.
And also, there's so many ways in which textiles are interpreted and applied into our lives, whether it's something that we wear, whether it's something we sit on, whether it's something we have in our homes or in our cars. It's in everything, or in architecture even.
Yes.
It's in everything. So I was constantly questioning what is a textile. So
Mm.
I continued. I'm this person who asks
Me too.
questions.
Oh my God. I literally, whew, yeah.
So my family hated this.
I'm like, why? What about that? Why?
Yeah,
What about that? Same. Yeah, get it.
that was why time. But like, it was very irritating for everybody. But that's just me, and it continues still.
Continues
And
today, same. Still annoying, still asking why. I hear you. I'm the same. Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and I need to know
I know. Exactly.
because then I understand
Yeah.
how to position things or how to
Sure.
place things, and
Of course.
also respect it because that's ultimately what I want to communicate is
Hmm.
how to care and respect
Hmm.
for how the world is made through materials.
Hmm.
So that translation exercise is really key. So there's been when I moved to London in 2005,
Hmm.
I did a course called Textile Futures,
Hmm.
which opened my world to so many things.
Wow. Where was that?
St. Martin's,
St. Martin's. Yeah.
yeah. and the course is now called Material Futures, so it continues in a different form.
But you're also supporting that course, right? You've lectured with that course, or you've done stuff with that. That's a
Yeah.
nice full circle for you, actually, Moment, to be honest.
Yeah, and also teaching in other institutions as
Sure.
well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that was really cool as a memory and, moment, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And also just living here opened up my world to so many things, and traveling, I think, throughout my life, I've learned how other cultures make things, and I was always traveling because of those reasons. I was like wanting to learn from others and seeing the cross-cultural connections between textiles and materials and like
Sure.
how things are made. So there was a moment when I was like 17 and we went to the north of Thailand and met these long necked women in the hills of Thailand. I was obsessed. I was like, how do you do this? So yeah. And all the things that they were making, I interviewed them. It was then set as a project for myself, and I was really fascinated with women and textiles and gender inequality through making and things like this in history. So yeah, I like to question things and understand how to then not just, I don't want to live in the past, but I want to understand how we can take that forward into something that can be applied today and to our futures. So yeah, so it's kind of travel, that course, and then I was working for many different companies and brands. So Alexander McQueen, Hussein Shalayan. I worked for UVA doing loads of lighting installations and animations, and Nissan for automotive. And yeah, I worked for a really, really long period of time before I even entered my own practice.
Oh, right. Okay.
And this year's the 10th year of Matter, which is very cool.
Oh, congratulations. That's a milestone. I mean, 10 years, it's huge. And so because of course why materials matter, is that 10 years as well? When is that? 20?
Well,
No,
that's from
that's 2018, isn't it? Yeah.
2018. So yeah, there's been moments in my life where I've had to question what I do and what I'm going to do about
Sure.
it, because I was always like, in working, nobody really understood the value that materials provide to any kind of outcome or project, because they always kind of got entered into the end of the design process.
Yes, as opposed to the beginning and even the inception of a design, right?
Exactly.
Has that changed now with so much focus on the big need around understanding that? Has that shifted for you? Is there more opportunity and is there more interest? Because for me, it's like the heartland. And I talk about this a little bit in the book I've just written as well. This kind of like, where do you start when it comes to innovation, when it comes to design? Like how, it has to start from here, it feels, Has that changed in terms of interest from the industry and other places for you?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm so glad it has, because there needs to be more effort towards this. And this is what I'm always like preaching, basically. This is like my life story. But it's really important to understand the need, one, like why do we need this, one, and then two, like how are we going to make it? So the material guides that process, and it needs to lead it.
Of course.
The material also has a life of its own, of like, it has emotional qualities and functional ones. And if you understand those materials from that lens, those lenses even, we then understand how to integrate that into an object or a piece of architecture, or whatever it is that ends up becoming the final outcome. And then also understand how to maybe reuse it, or has it got another life somewhere else in another form. And for me, this is like the principles of life, honestly.
I think you're not wrong. So for all those brands before, maybe before there was a bit more focus on it. Have you ever faced any situations where you had to choose between these personal beliefs and professional expectations? It happens, and it continues to happen to me, like, all the time. How do you navigate that? And is there anything that stands out for you? As I said, it might be from before or more recently.
Oh, yeah, I think we're always in conversation. I'm not going to say battle. They're always in conversation with each other. And it feels like I'm trying to push something that can have meaning in
Yeah.
anything that I do. And for that to happen, other people need to believe it too.
Yeah.
So that is a challenge already, to convince others that,
Mm.
oh, this is maybe the way. And speed and productivity don't necessarily
Line up with that. Yes.
and quantity as well.
Yeah.
So it becomes a challenge because that process takes slightly more effort, because that's not what the infrastructure is of a company or a brand. It's more like churn.
First,
I
get it out. Yeah.
I would only have 2 weeks to design a whole collection, for example. And research before then would be like a week. So there's really no time. And therefore I would do much more than I, needed to. So it was always in constant like collision, I guess. But I would always push it as the agenda. And
Yes.
I'm trying to think of an example of when this has existed or when I've integrated it. Can we return to that?
Yeah, of course we can. And as I was saying, it might come out later in the conversation anyway, so it's fine. What is the difference? So Potato Head Bali, which I know you worked on, incredible new way of doing things. Was there a bit more lead time when it came to that kind of materials thinking and translation versus say a brand before that? Just because it feels like there was more consideration with that one.
Definitely more consideration. I think that's a really great example of projects where my personal beliefs and
intersected. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It was more seamless for sure. And because the location was in Bali, those beliefs already exist. It's part of the ecosystem, it's part of the island. I don't need to necessarily
convince. Yeah, cajole. Yeah.
So that was already available and open as a dialogue. So, and being on the island and doing the work there with people meant that it was so much more immersive and felt like embodied, I would say. So there's not, and also making out there is so much easier.
Sure.
Because the craftspeople, the manufacturing, it's all visible. It's accessible in a way where it's not here. And labor is cheaper, hugely. So to make things was much easier. And I think for me, like, the infrastructure we have here is so reliant on the powers above and bureaucracy, where we, as a grassroots kind of movement, it's not as easy to make those shifts. So whereas in like country or island, like the island of Bali or other countries that I've worked in, people are infrastructure. And this sort of self-governing approach to doing things, it allows you to have those principles integrated into the work itself. So it's so much, it's a bit easier. Well, a lot
easier. And it's interesting you say that, because obviously, you talked about the initial convincing people in the first place that it's needed. And if you have that already, I remember us having a conversation, I don't know if we're at dinner or somewhere else, about the global south, and that's kind of where your feeling kind of lies, probably similar to that, but also the work you do in Lagos. Tell us a bit about that, because I feel like that's where this intersection of Seetal and work, and that's important for me. Like, I feel like people should work in the thing that they want to add value to, add meaning to personally. I do that with what I do now. So tell us just quickly about Plan B. And is that a continuing project, or is that just something that was done and moved on? Where are you with that?
It still lives.
It still lives. That's the main thing. You gotta leave legacy. You gotta leave things to add value to people, communities. So
100.
yeah.
I believe in that. I mean, like
Yeah.
the exchange. Well, Plan B is a makerspace and a residency space also. And I went out there in 2020, and it was with a friend. Like, I have many friends in Lagos, and over COVID, we were just chatting more intensely and intently as well. And in those moments, there was just alignment in terms of like visions that we were seeing for ourselves in our lives. And yeah, it was an interesting time. And I say that, and I don't like that word at all, but that time was, I was going through a separation, living with my ex-husband now. Well, and then this kind of conversation opened up with some friends, and he was like, "Why don't you come do residency?" I was like, "Okay."
Bye.
So I did.
But you know what? I really just love that. I talk constantly about identifying opportunities and going with them and embracing them, like, I feel like people sometimes miss what may feel hard, difficult, just because it, out of your comfort zone, potentially, probably not yours with the situation, but sometimes that's the game changer for you, isn't it? And it should be explored, I feel. So good for you. I kind of love that that's how it happened in a way, for at least looking at you. I don't know how you felt at the time, but what's come out has been amazing, which is great.
Honestly, it was the best thing ever.
The best thing that ever happened was like, I'm off to Africa. See you later. Bye.
Because I was just like, okay, I can't see my life here for now. So,
great.
This was perfect. And it was only meant to be for a maximum of 2-3 months. And my friend and I, Tushar, we applied for some funding, and I booked my ticket anyway. And I was just like, let me go. And then we got it when I was out there. So it was all the stars aligned.
How long were you out there for, all in all? Then? I was like, I'm still here.
Yes, I was there for almost 2 years.
Amazing. Yeah. And as I said, I remember you just going, I need to live in the global south. I do, and I I feel like that's where in a few years I'll be like, I'm coming to visit you in some, place in the middle of wherever, and I'm looking forward to that, actually.
Oh yeah, I have plans.
Do you think that really, really shaped your resilience? Let's talk a bit about turning that kind of adversity into strength. Because I feel like, we're in a world that's so changeable by the second. Resilience is key, right? So how have your lived experiences given you, while may challenging at the time, obviously in multiple ways, how has that helped you build resilience? How does that help you solve problems, or create opportunities for yourself as well?
These words are so fascinating to me because they're behaviors which I'm letting go of.
Right.
Resiliency for me now is my softness.
Yes. Oh yeah, it can be whatever it is.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
just,
and I think you're right, language is huge at the moment for me. Like I could talk about it all the time. Yeah, go on,
well,
please. Yeah.
especially having written a book.
Yeah, exactly. There's another
Yeah,
book in the making. Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I feel like resiliency in my life before felt like I had to hold everything together,
Mm.
you know, and for everyone. And now I've let go of all of that and given it back to everybody. Now it feels like I'm really leaning into my feminine and my softness. And that for me is providing me the anchoring that I need to then navigate the rest of this life that is coming to me
Hmm.
and is available to me. And I think, so you said resiliency, solutions, and
Opportunities for yourself, and it is about using your softness, you know, to help you do that. And as I say, you know, these are very broad topics, so it isn't going resilience is this. It's whatever it is for that person in whatever way that might be.
yeah,
But and
because
it's also a language thing, yeah. So there isn't a, for me there isn't like a this is the definition and everyone needs to abide by that at all. But I love what you're saying there about actually leaning into the almost not the wall of resilience. And, you know, I love that.
yeah, because it's for me, resiliency is tough. It's like
Yeah. And
to be
it's got
really
that connotation. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
and like withstand things, and even though you're not in agreement with it and it's not right for you,
Yeah.
you still have to withstand it. And I'm like, no.
No. I'm out.
um and I think even with the idea of solutions, it's I prefer alternatives
Alternative. That's a really, really good way to look at it. Yeah. That's a great
because
learning for me.
I think for me, like problems and solutions is too fixed,
Mm, that's true.
and then it's fixed in time also because at a certain point of time that solution will become a problem.
Yes, that's true too. And we see it now
Yeah.
over and over again. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
constant. And so if we say there is an alternative to this
Mm,
as iteration, you know,
love that. Yeah.
there's an evolution to that alternative because
Mm,
then it offers many other options for us to like go forward with.
yes.
So I prefer that. And again, it's this kind of, it's how I've been brought up. There's always another way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really believe that. And that's how I've guided my life. So, like, even the things that you're asking me now is like, I've always thought and still believe that there's always another way.
Of
I don't
course.
have to be in this if that's not right for me. So, and forget the question you were asking me. So,
Well, I mean, it's much more. It's for me. I guess what we're talking about here is the way you're approaching these things now, because actually, problem solving, as you were saying, is limiting, whereas
yeah.
alternatives is broader, and it feels like a much more open way of looking at the world, which I actually really like, and I constantly talk about. And I talk about differently. I just talk about it as like plan, you know, there's ways, there's always a solution to everything. How that's manifested. But I wonder if that's because I'm from the global south.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's just it's just in my head. I always live in hope and possibility because we had to. And we always
Yeah.
found a way to innovate because we didn't have the things, right? So I feel like that's just like internally within me, I look at the world like that and I just go, there's always a way forward. I really believe that. I believe that. But, you know, and that's, I think, where I struggle a little bit because it's so binary.
Mhm.
And so I'm really enjoying what you're saying because it's actually just articulating, I guess, how I think, but I'm really enjoying the way you're saying it. So thank you for that. Obviously, your articulation is much better than mine. Mine is just babbling on a little bit, but I definitely hear what you're saying because I kind of feel the same as well. Can you share an example where this way of being, this perspective has sort of led to like an unexpected breakthrough, an unexpected success for a project you were working on, a brand you were working on? And this can be anywhere in your career path. Is there anything that pops to mind?
Yes,
Hmm.
there's a great example, and it's quite a uniquely small one, I would
Mm-hmm.
say. But it came from a larger place, and it stemmed from a field trip that we did in Bali for the hotel Potato
Mm-hmm.
Head. And, we were wandering some areas, and I was like, I like my first point of call, like process, is observation and listening.
Okay.
So, like, these two processes are my first entrance
Mm-hmm.
to any project. And especially when I'm not on someone else's land,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not there to, extract or exploit
Sure.
or anything like this. I need to go in with wanting to learn from others. And so observing and listening is that. And this observation was just like, oh, all these palm fronds that are like just on the floor everywhere. What is this? Because it's incredibly strong, and I'm seeing it everywhere, and it's incredibly abundant. So can we use this
There's
material?
something in that, I wonder.
But then, like, the people we were with, they were like, yeah, of course, this is used on thatching
Yeah.
for Balinese temples.
Mm.
I was like, no way. So it
Amazing.
was,
Yeah.
again, this moment of realization. Okay, so if it's for thatching, it's very protective and shielding,
Mm-hmm.
and it has maybe qualities. Well, we discovered the qualities of it and the properties of being fire retardant naturally because the material offers
Amazing.
that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and especially in that heat, it's not going to start fire, but it's very cooling at the
Yes.
same time. And yeah, insulating and stuff. So we ended up working with it as lampshades for
Amazing.
interiors and things like that. And it's so unique in its form as well, because it still looks like thatching, but for a lamp. And then Max Lam designed this, and we kind of helped initiate the thoughts and briefed, and he worked with craftspeople to make it. And then because we also visited bamboo places, we also visited lava stone places. The base was lava stone. The lamp stand, the stand itself was bamboo, and then the shade was the ijuk, it's called.
That must be awesome to actually see that physically come to life and be used. Because sometimes I feel like something like that would be in an installation. You know what I mean? But I think the usability of it in the hotel must be amazing to actually see, feel, as you go through. Because I think that's always for me, always a thing is the actual usability of something. You know what I mean? Because I think something is beautiful and it can be protected behind a glass.
Yeah.
It's been with me with sneakers. I wear my sneakers. I don't keep them in whatever. So it's this idea of usability for me. So that must be amazing to actually see that in real life, in real time, come to life and be used, and also be celebrated because of it. That's kind of like a really, really, really feels for me where all of your worlds kind of collided in quite an incredible way. Tell me about how you lead and connect with others. So, do you lean into this kind of feminine, soft power when it comes to sort of fostering collaboration with people? How do you sort of describe that style?
My leadership
Yeah,
style.
your leadership style.
It's a great question. I always really enjoy people's growth.
Mm.
And that for me, like my whole practice is based on the principle of discovering what you're made of. So I want to encourage that in others always. And if we're going to collaborate together or work together in some way, let's go on this journey.
Yeah.
And not only is the outcome going to encourage that, whatever we're building together.
Mm.
But we're also going to grow through this process and learn more about each other. So when I hired quite a few staff members for particular projects, the way that I led the team was every morning we would vent.
Get it
So
out.
just get it out your system, and then we can decompress.
Yes.
And then understand what the tasks are for today. So then we can actually do the work.
Yeah.
So rather than holding on to all this stuff that we're all trying to navigate and hold and pull together in some way, but I would have like a 15-20 minute venting session. We'll just go like everything
Note
out
to self.
And then, just re-enter our bodies and minds again so it feels a bit more centered. And then I would want to also learn about what their strengths and weaknesses are, so that therefore we can understand what's missing, where the gaps are, but also know where they want to go forward in their careers, because I want them to grow. I want them to be better than me. I don't want them to be me. I want them to be themselves. So how do I encourage that? And I I was asked this really great question as well about like my leadership style, and I said I like there to be a dream, and for us to be able to attain that in some way, shape, or form, but at least we're navigating somewhere, but in a practical, pragmatic way, so that it feels possible. And that's what I do with every project that I have. And I do that with myself also.
As well.
And I live by it. And so there's a little bit of dreaming, and then there's practicality and pragmatism around it. So it feels possible.
Yeah. And I feel like, because sometimes if you say, here's a dream, it's far away, and it can feel overwhelming, because it feels like, oh my God, that's such a big vision, what have you. But so I think that practicality, the steps to get there, is a really important part of a successful project. So from everything I'm hearing that you're saying, and obviously empathy is central to everything, it sounds like, because it feels like that's the essence of who you are, for other people, things, living things, which feels like everything for you, and understanding, because I feel like that, and then being able to sort of like leverage someone's unique strength, is important. Are there any sort of like examples where that's happened, where you're like, you know what, we really like leaned into someone's or the team's uniqueness, and the outcome was, because I know you said that it's the approach, but is there anything that you're like, you know what, this really came together and it was like, an amazing project? And again, for me, it's not about necessarily the big project, it's whatever projects that you worked on, with teams or collaborators. Lagos. Okay.
It was on a whim. I'm sorry. I was just like, what am I doing? But I just did it. And
I mean, sometimes that's almost the best start, because it's like you don't overthink it and sort of bring up the barriers before you even in the thing, right? Yeah.
Totally. It was my guided intuition, so I followed it. And I really believe in that as well. So there's that. I'm very spiritual, as you can tell. So but yeah, I think that project in particular was so meaningful for everybody. So actually, an addition to my leadership style is everyone should win.
Yeah, of course.
Even the planet.
Yeah.
So I can't really work when there's just one winner.
Sure.
That doesn't bode well for anybody and doesn't have longevity. So everybody needs to be valued. And this project was a real note to that for sure, because we built a makerspace and we built it with the community and live on that street and who lived in the building as well. So we housed them in this space. It became my home too. And we exchanged knowledge and skills, and we understood what the street needed, and they wanted to learn how to make things and enterprising. And I was like, well, the most abundant material here is like plastic, clearly. So how do we clean up this place through this material? We had a deposit scheme where people would just like dunk their plastic bottles in this bag, which was like basketball net kind of thing. And everybody would just do that. So behavior changed.
Amazing.
We were clearing out the gutters and the sewers, so like plumbing could, like water could flow more naturally, and cleaning up all that plastic. And we used domestic tools as well, like sandwich toasting machines, a blender.
Wow.
So everybody knew how to use them.
Yeah.
So it didn't feel unfamiliar, but it felt like the unfamiliarity became what we were blending and how these materials could be processed rather than food. So again, food, material, same thing.
Yeah, of course.
And then we designed the whole space with all the materials that were found locally. So like stuffing for seating, we got coconut hair, which is very traditional material to do like upholstery with. Hibiscus dyed cloth for the textiles, and demolition rubble and wiring for the lighting and things like this. And there were so many things that we made together. And because of that, they then understand the people that we worked with, like Godwin and T-Shine and Mama Buki and all these, and her girls, like they still do it now.
I mean, and I feel like because I think people get really like, what can I do? What can we do? You know, it feels unattainable. But, you know, by using things that are in the home, as you were saying, you know, the toasting machine, all this kind of stuff, it kind of feels like it's not so far away. That pragmatism and that practicality, I think, is probably why it's still doing what it needs to do. And long may that last, and long and wide may that spread. You know, that would be great to be able to do. I know you're in the middle of writing another book. What is the difference between the first one and this one, with all the in between that's happened for you?
Oh, so this one feels so much more personal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one's a material atlas.
Yes.
The first one is why materials matter. So that first one had to open up people's perspectives around what a material actually is and what it can be. So there was many things in there that were unique and maybe expansive for people to kind of consider a material, like air. So there's a designer called Tino Subat. He's collecting carbon from London's pollution, the air. And the carbon that's collected, he then makes it into lead for pencils, well, you know,
amazing.
and dye for clothing and all sorts of things. Digital materials, there's blood as materials, which is a very ancient way to make plastic-like material. So yeah, I really wanted to expand people's thinking around what a material is. So I started there. And this one now is talking about the migration of materials, how these materials came to be on these lands. And the way that I'm categorizing it is indigenous, local, migrant, and cosmic.
Okay.
So there's so much more essence and spiritual belonging, and also thinking about how people have migrated with materials, which is my whole ancestry and many people. So it's people learning skills with these materials to understand how they can make better lives for themselves in other places, right? And that's the journey of man, essentially. And these materials have enabled many people to make a living for themselves. So why are they existing here? How are these materials being imported, exported? Are they even, what is truly native even? And like, can something become native if it's there long enough? And how do we also learn from each other when coconuts are in Sri Lanka and also South so many places around the world? Like, how do we learn from each other through that as well? So there'll be examples of, you know, multiple examples of some materials where those materials are part of the landscape naturally. So, yeah, it's so much more personal because of my own heritage.
I literally was going to say, like, this feels so connected to your story as well. So must be really great to be able to kind of have this double you know, intention and motivation around it as well, because it's about growth. Because it sounds like, I mean, you know, we've talked before about everything is a growth, you know, moment. So this feels must be quite lovely to, in a way, explore that and then, you know, write it down. Because I think sometimes people explore, but they don't really like articulate it in some way and form. So I was going to say, like, this feels deeply personal for you, which it is, which is great. Just a question though, just a question on that. How do you balance sort of this personal perspective, inspiration with industry trends and what client demands are as well, you know? Because if you still work, you know, when you work with brands, how do you balance that? Because you've got such deep personal perspectives on things that are, for me, super relevant. But how does that work in the industry?
So there's a whole there's a whole different language that is
Right.
industry language.
Yeah.
And there's a whole other language that I prefer, which feels less exploitative.
Yeah.
Yeah, less about selling and more about what the impact is, right? But you can still sell. I believe in commerciality, so there's never.
It's not that. Yeah.
I don't have an issue with that at all. I think it's important. Otherwise, how do we live?
Agreed.
So,
Totally. Yeah. But you don't have to kill everything in front of you.
Thank you.
In order to do it. Yeah, it's in the book. Don't worry. Yeah, yeah. I'm trying from this side, but yeah.
Thank you. But that is it.
That's
and also, why do we need to do it at a global scale with everything? I'm sorry. That's not necessary. Yeah. So I try to reframe things through language first, and it then starts to distill something that feels manageable. And so for me, supply chain is migration.
Oh, supply chain is massive for me. It is in the world that we live in. Supply chain, and again, I talk about in the book, like, this is a real where things need to be focused, to be honest. I totally believe that. Sorry, I had to just jump in there really, really quickly. Apologies. Go ahead.
Not at all. I'm not at all. It's great because it's the conversation. So I think for me, if you really break it down to what supply chain is, it's migration. If you really break down what circular economy is, it's reincarnation. So I'm just like,
all the way back to Leicester.
How are we doing this and selling it?
Yeah, yeah.
So let's start here. And I do things in such a way where it's getting to the root of something, but in a simple way.
Yes.
So there's complexity with any particular material or the system around it or the world around it that it lives in. But I love that.
Yeah.
And it's not wise to remove the complexity, but it is wise to remove complications.
Yes. Yes.
So
And there's a difference between those words, actually. Totally. Yeah.
100%.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because we are also complex
Of
as
course.
creatures.
Of course we are. Yeah. Yeah.
We're multi-layered and, have...
Intersectional, all the things. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So don't get rid of that.
No.
That's like erasure.
Yeah.
So, let's include the complexity, but have it presented in a simple way.
Yeah.
So that's my job as a translator,
Yeah.
is that. So I have to understand all the complexities around it, but present it in a way which feels simple and manageable. And again, a step-by-step process. So I still take these principles of what I've been brought up with and present it in a way where it feels like, oh, but we've always lived like this.
Yeah. Yeah. For millennia.
Exactly.
Just like, tell me about, from all of this, what do you hope others take away from this conversation? From, what is the one or two takeaways for people listening in that you'd love to share, that you'd love to land? Because it's, for me, quite simple, but I just want to make sure that you've done quite a different approach to things for a long, long, long time. And I feel like it's more relevant than ever, to be honest. But I think there's still a way to go. What would be the thing that you want people to kind of start thinking about in like a few sentences? What's going to sort of influence the next generation of leaders and hopefully the current generation of leaders?
Yeah, let's hope that. There's so many things. Honestly, it's as simple as this. There's 3 things I will share. And is to not be afraid to discover what you're made of. And that life is possible. And you can do it in a way where it feels... I made this up, my job is made up. So I haven't really done, if I look at my lived experience, I've made it possible.
Yeah.
And I think living in possibility allows you to dream in a way where you can actually live it. So I don't want people to think they have to save the world. I want them to think that they can change something, but it doesn't mean they have to save the world.
Yeah.
So the change, I think if you can understand what change you want to make, what your message is, and make that possible, the world is yours.
Yeah. And actually, if multiple people do that, then you get to that scale that you might need. And that's why, I totally hear you, because as I said, I live in hope and possibility. So for me, I create, same as you, like I had no access. I didn't learn this thing that I do, but I just feel like, what would be the obvious, respectful, mutually beneficial way to navigate brands and culture? You know what I mean? And then people ask me all the time, what do you do? And I'm like, I don't know. I also use the word translator, actually. I'm like corporate and culture translator. I use that word, and it's a really specific word as well, because it's a different service, actually, than a partner and agent. It's a translation service, which means it goes actually both ways. And that's, for me, really, really important. It's not a one way conversation to be had. So I get it. In terms of, if you could tell your younger self anything, what would you say about the importance of staying true to your personal lived experiences? What would it be?
So me and my younger self are friends now.
Okay.
So it
Yes,
we've
I get it.
become friends. And so she knows
Okay.
that that this life that we've been able to cultivate is possible. But she didn't know that. And my therapist even described me as this. She basically, no, these are her teachings, and I will never ever. There's two things. You have choices,
Okay.
or I have choices, and it's not your business what they think.
Whew. Like that one a lot. Like that one a lot. I think that that comes with experience and growth and age, doesn't it? Like that is,
And
yeah, and
yeah,
choice. Yeah, exactly. I love that. So in saying that, you know, and this is the closing question, I guess, what has changed for you in terms of what success looks like then and now, both personally, professionally? You know, as all these changes happen, as all this growth has happened, as all this healing has happened, what does success look like for you? And has that changed?
true, dramatically.
Dramatically, yeah.
I was put on a pedestal to be a savior, and that's not my job.
Okay.
So yeah, that was very overwhelming
Yeah. That's
for
huge. That's
a
a lot of responsibility, isn't it? That huge.
I can't do that on my own. Are you crazy?
It's a lot. It's a lot to ask.
It's not possible.
It is not possible. Yeah. Okay. So that's a big pressure, no? Yeah.
Yes, I learned to let go of that quite quickly, but it was always there. That was what was expected of me, and it was hard to uphold. But I don't want to live by other people's expectations. And now success really looks like I would like a place in India,
Mm-hmm.
a little place in somewhere in West Africa, and just a little place here.
Yeah.
And that I get to work cross culturally with my friends, make things that actually can be meaningful for others
Mm-hmm.
in those parts, but also give back to those places that it
Yeah.
came from.
Yeah.
And I think this kind of interconnected, like these are my roots as well.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
and I want to make sure that I set those roots down for myself and maybe my future
Mm-hmm.
generations,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that may look like. And because I don't have homes in those places to return to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important for me to feel like I have a place there. And yeah, I want to be able to do that and offer it to others. And these spaces will be for others as well, almost like mini schools.
Yeah. I love that. And I know you'll actually achieve that because, you know, that is the dream. But you also will know how to get there because you're pragmatic and practical too. So we'll speak again as we do always. But let's look at the next few years. Maybe you'll come back to the pod and be like, you know what? I am coming to you from that little place in India, which would be very happy to hear from. But thank you so much. Super insightful. Super revealing, a big learning for me as well. So thank you so much for your time, Seetal. I'll speak to you again really, really soon. Thanks.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.